Hello, Namaskar. This is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. We start with India and China. Locked at the border with tens of thousands of troops deployed on both sides, but also trading like there's no tomorrow. China is once again India's top trading partner. This has strategic and financial implications. How can India break this trend? We'll discuss that. In Russia, a major reshuffle. Vladimir Putin fires his longtime ally to appoint an economist as the new defense minister. That too in the middle of a war. We'll tell you why. How is broke Pakistan buying defense equipment from China? What is the latest warning that the IMF has given to the Maldives? India voted in the fourth phase of the general election. The highlights. What are superbugs? Will they lead to the next pandemic? Why is India particularly at risk? What has triggered pro-democracy protests in Tunisia? This is the country where the Arab Spring began. Why is India's Chabahar deal with Iran back in focus? Why did the shipping minister travel all the way to Tehran in the middle of the general election? What is a diamond planet? Can you mine the precious stone there? And will artificial intelligence hack your love life? Can AI help you date? Apparently, it's already doing it. We'll explain the headlines first. Turkey unveils a 3-year austerity plan to tackle high inflation. The measures include limiting recruitment and transport spending for public servants. The construction of public buildings is also suspended for 3 years. In April, Turkey's inflation had reached nearly 70%. In Pakistan, Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif resigns as PMLN chief. This clears the way for his brother Nawaz Sharif to take over. In 2018, Nawaz Sharif was removed as the party president. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif says the time has come for his brother to take his quote-unquote rightful place. China and Cambodia to hold joint military exercises from Thursday. More than 2,000 troops will participate in the drills. Cambodia, a staunch China ally, receives billions of dollars from Beijing in investments. The US suspects China could use Cambodia to expand its influence in the region. A Kazakh court sentences a former minister to 24 years in prison. Last year, Kwandak Bishimbayev beat his wife to death in a restaurant. The former economy minister was found guilty of torture and murder. In 2018, Bishimbayev was sentenced to 10 years in prison for corruption, but was freed a year later. Floods in Indonesia killed more than 40 people. Some are still missing. On Saturday, heavy rain caused large rocks to roll down from one of Indonesia's most active volcanoes on the Sumatra island. The flash floods have wreaked havoc, inundating roads and homes. And France is asking its men to quote-unquote drive like a woman. It's part of a road safety campaign. A government report says more than 80% of deadly road accidents were caused by men. Last year, more than 3,000 people died in road accidents in France. Who is India's top trading partner? You must be thinking of an ally, a friendly neighbor, or a trusted Western partner. Well, think again. India's top trading partner is China. The bilateral exchange is around $118.4 billion. $118.4 billion. The United States is a close second. That trade is around $118.3 billion. So hardly any difference. And yet, China's #1 position is worrying because it reflects a larger strategic challenge for India. Also, this is not unprecedented. In 2021, China was India's top trading partner. Then the US took over. And now, after a gap of 2 years, China is back on top. Why is this bad news? I'll give you 2 reasons, political and financial. First, the political reason. China is India's strategic rival, arguably its biggest external threat. A country that is salami slicing Indian territory. Just think back to the 2020 Galwan clashes. India lost 20 soldiers in the violence. And since then, relations have hit pause. No high-level engagements, no political breakthroughs. Things have largely been frozen. Even today, disengagement has not been achieved. More than 20 rounds of military talks have been held, yet no breakthrough. China has around 60,000 soldiers facing the LAC, line of actual control, the de facto border at the moment. India too has a similar number. But that same China is our top trading partner. It's obviously counterproductive, which brings us to the second reason, the financial one. This trade is tagged heavily in China's favor. India's imports make up $101 billion and China's imports make up just $16 billion. So look at the trade deficit. It's almost $85 billion. Same with the trajectory. Let's look at the period from 2018 to 2023. India's exports to China barely moved, but China's exports to India surged more than 44%. As a result, the deficit has widened. It was $53 billion in 2018. It is $85 billion now. I know these numbers do not look good, but you must factor in some variables. Like, what is the overall trade situation? What does India buy from China and how does this help Beijing? The overall trade situation has improved. In 2022, India's trade deficit was around $121 billion. By 2023, it fell to $78 billion, which brings us to the second question. What does India buy from China? Simply put, very important things like electronic goods, your smartphones, laptops, telecom parts, machinery for factories, plastics, ingredients for the pharma sector, and EV batteries. Around 75% of India's battery imports are from China. It's a very dangerous dependence. And that brings us to our third question. How does China benefit from all of this? Imagine a conflict scenario. The fighting won't just be physical. It will also be financial. And that's where this trade imbalance could backfire. China could choke India's factories, maybe withhold strategic exports, and hamper India's capabilities. And to be clear, this is not a problem just for India. Most major economies in the world face the same issue. China is the top trading partner to 120 countries. 120 countries. You have Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, Vietnam, the Philippines, Australia. None of these countries are on good terms with China, especially not the Philippines. They're clashing almost every day. So what are these countries doing? Well, some of them are de-risking. Basically, expanding supply chains beyond China. Others are friend-shoring, taking businesses and factories away from China and then putting them on friendly shores like India or Vietnam. That is friend-shoring. But have these strategies worked? Well, in some cases, yes, they have. Let me take you back to the year 2010. There was a standoff between China and Japan. A Chinese fishing boat crashed with Japanese warships. It happened near the Senkaku Islands. These are claimed by both Japan and China. This is where the clash happened. Now, Beijing responded by cutting off rare earth minerals to Japan, and Tokyo was spooked. In 2010, around 90% of their rare minerals came from China. So what did Japan do? They launched a billion-dollar plan. They expanded their supply chain, and today the dependence has come down from 90% to 60%. So the moral of the story is clear. If you invest money and time, you can reduce dependence on China. Maybe not completely, definitely not immediately, but you can make a dent. Which brings us back to India. How is New Delhi reducing dependence on China? First of all, by boosting local manufacturing. India offers production-linked incentives to investors like tax cuts and subsidies, and this scheme covers around 14 sectors. $26 billion have been allocated for this scheme, and it's slowly working. By November last year, the scheme brought around 1 lakh crore rupees in investments. It also created almost 700,000 jobs. But like I said, it will take time. The second strategy is punitive action. India has levied 46 anti-dumping duties in the last 3 years. 60% of them targeted Chinese goods. The key is to build on that. Because unlike the US or Europe, India's stakes are higher. We share a very long border with China. We also can't friend shore because here India is the friendly shore. So I guess New Delhi will have to strike a balance. Our population needs cheap Chinese goods, but strategy requires de-risking. And now let's talk about Russia and the shake-up in their defense ministry. President Vladimir Putin has picked a new defense minister. His wartime general Sergei Shoigu is on his way out. He is being replaced by an economist. An economist will be Russia's next defense minister, and this switch has taken everyone by surprise. Why would Putin dump his longtime ally and choose an economist to lead the Russian military, that too in the middle of a war? Shoigu was a trusted teammate of Putin. He served as defense minister for 12 years. He's also believed to be quite close to Putin. They've often been seen together on fishing trips in Siberia. Last year, this minister faced a mutiny. Wagner chief Yevgeny Prigozhin and his troops rebelled against the Russian military. Putin sided with the defense minister, with Shoigu. Some would say that he even protected him, and today Putin has demoted the same man. In his new role, he will lead Russia's Security Council. His powers will be significantly curtailed. He won't be among the top decision makers. This shift is expected to happen in the next few days. The Kremlin has issued a statement. Putin believes it is time for Russia's defense ministry to try some new ideas.
It is very important to integrate the economy of the security sector to the economy of the whole country. Integrate so that it is in accordance with the dynamic of the current time. And the second, which is important to mention, is that today the one who is more open to innovation and the quickest implementation wins on the battlefield.
Well, that's the official explanation. But there is more to this move. Let's tell you about some theories that are floating around. The first one is about Shoigu and his track record at the Defense Ministry. Apparently, there were many corruption charges. Last month, a scandal broke out. One of Shoigu's deputies was arrested. His name is Timur Ivanov. He's believed to be a confidant of Shoigu. Ivanov was accused of accepting bribes. In the Defense Ministry, he was in charge of giving lucrative contracts like construction projects and procurement deals. Reports say Ivanov misused his position. He took huge bribes to the tune of 1 billion rubles. That's almost $11 million. And these revelations put Shoigu in the spotlight. Of course, he denied any wrongdoing, but now he's lost his job as the defense minister. So his removal could be an old-fashioned cleanup, which brings us to his replacement. Andrey Belousov. Not exactly new to the power matrix. Currently, he serves as Russia's deputy prime minister. He too is part of Putin's inner circle. One of his trusted economic advisors. He has no military experience. He has never served in the Russian military. Then why did Putin pick him for the defense minister's job? The answer to that question could lie in data. Let me show you some numbers. This year, Russia will spend $109 billion on defense. That's almost 30% of all expenses on defense. Before the war in Ukraine, defense spending was just 2.6% of Russia's budget, of Russia's GDP rather. Now it has crossed 6%. So defense doesn't just drive the Russian economy, it overwhelmingly now defines it. And Putin is trusting this new pick, Belousov, to put Russia's massive defense budget to good use. He could end up steering Russia's economy, or at least a significant part of it, directly from the defense ministry. Today, he spelled out some of his priorities.
Indeed, the pay received by service personnel who take part in the special military operation in Ukraine and various allowances reached minimal amount of $2,200 a month. I think it's a mess when participants in the special military operation who come back on vacation are driven from civilian medical institutions to hospitals which are often simply overcrowded.
Belousov talked about building homes and hospitals. He also discussed welfare benefits for soldiers fighting the Ukraine war. So Russia's next defense minister is giving some clear signals. They won't slow down in Ukraine. The conflict will continue for as long as Putin desires. Only now they have a new soldier in the war, the Russian economy. Our next story is from Pakistan, South Asia's best example of economic mismanagement. Today, there were developments in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. The region has been in turmoil for the past few days. We highlighted this on Friday. The people in the region were protesting over high electricity prices. They ended up clashing with the police. Over the weekend, the protests intensified, and today, Pakistan has given in. Their Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif has approved a grant for POK, a grant worth $86 million. There's no clarity about how this money will be used. The people of POK have to take Sharif at his word that they will benefit. somehow. We don't know if this bribe will placate the people of Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, but it does raise a question. How did the perpetually broke Pakistan come up with this grant? How will it actually cobble the money together? After all, Pakistan's economy is in dire straits. It owes billions of dollars in loans. About $125 billion is the debt to external lenders. That's about 42% of Pakistan's GDP, external debt. And it's not expecting high growth this year to make up for this debt. By the end of June, their economy is expected to grow by just 1.8%. That's over the 2023-2024 financial year. It's not really a good outlook for Pakistan. High debt and poor growth, that's what they're looking at. So how is it suddenly finding money for POK? The answer may lie in another development. Yesterday, Pakistan signed a defense deal with Iraq. It reportedly includes the sale of fighter jets, 12 jets for about $1.8 billion. It will bring some much-needed funds to Islamabad's empty coffers. And it's one of the rare occasions where the country's military is actually helping the economy, partially. Because Pakistan is selling JF Thunder fighter jets. JF here stands for Joint Fighter. It's a collaborative effort between Pakistan and its loan shark, China. Beijing has given billions of dollars to Islamabad. The lion's share of Pakistan's external debt is owed to the Chinese. How does Pakistan pay it back? Well, there are regular repayments, and then there are the arms purchases. A report came out last week highlighting the different ways that Pakistan is in China's pocket, or rather, how China's fingers are in Pakistan's pocket. Let's look at arms imports. Between 2019 and 2023, 82% of Pakistan's arms imports were from China, up from 69% in 2024, between 2024 to 2014 to 2018. So from 69, it went up to more than 80%. So China's share has gone up significantly in the last 10 years. Now, friendship is one thing, but why is Pakistan making itself completely dependent on Chinese arms? And these are not just small ticket items. Pakistan is buying heavy weapons like submarines. Last month, China launched a submarine, the first of 8 Hangar-class submarines it is building for Pakistan. The total cost is between $4 to $5 billion. That's not something Pakistan can really afford. So why and how is it buying these weapons? Well, think about it this way. When your loan shark asks you to buy something, do you really have a choice? It explains Pakistan's dire economic situation. It imports defense equipment from China, its debt keeps piling on, and it has to pay back these loans with interest. So it doesn't have enough to spend on its own citizens, and the citizens also get squeezed by high taxes to generate money to pay back the loans. In other words, Pakistan is spending big on Chinese weapons, and this is crushing Pakistan's economy. This is not exaggeration, this is not hyperbole. Look at this latest SIPRI report. That's the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, or SIPRI for short. Now, they have a database on military expenditure. One metric is military expenditure as a share of overall government spending. Basically, for every dollar that the government spends, how much of it goes to the military? And this is the case for Pakistan. Compare it to India or even bigger spenders like the US and China. In 2022, 14.5% of the Pakistani government spending was on the military. Every other country mentioned has less than 10%, but Pakistan has 14.5%. And this shows Pakistan's misplaced priorities, how Chinese arms imports are more important to Pakistan than its own citizens. Unless this changes, unless the Pakistani people get the first share of state resources, the country will never recover from its financial crisis, no matter how many jets it manages to sell. And speaking of fiscal mismanagement, the International Monetary Fund, or the IMF, has a message for the Maldives. Your debt levels are too high, and this is not their first warning. The IMF raised the same issue in the month of February as well. The question is Mali listening? First of all, let's look at the warning. An IMF team visited the Maldives this year. They assessed the national economy. They looked at key indicators and spoke to local officials. After that, they published a financial assessment. Look at what it says. Without significant policy changes, the Maldives remains at high risk of external and overall debt distress. This is what the IMF is saying. And what exactly is debt distress? When a country is unable to repay its loans, so either the loan has to be forgiven or it has to be restructured. Basically, it's a fancy word for being broke. The IMF says the Maldives is at high risk of being in that position. But do we know why? Well, the report mentions two major issues. One is high import prices. The Maldives does not locally produce much. Everything from fuel to food is imported. And commodity prices are high. You have two wars in West Asia and Europe, plus major concerns about supply chains. And the result is this: the Maldives takes loans to import stuff. The second reason is tourism. It makes up almost 1/3 of the Maldivian economy. And the IMF has flagged an issue with it. Again, let me quote from what they've said. Uncertainty surrounding the outlook is high and risks are tilted to the downside, including from delayed fiscal consolidation and weaker growth to key source markets for tourism. This is what the IMF has said in its warning to the Maldives. Let me focus on one point. Weaker growth in key tourism markets. Is that a reference to India? It could very well be. Indian arrivals in the Maldives are down 40% this year. Even their tourism minister is appealing for help. He is asking Indians to visit his country. But is President Mohammad Muizzu aware of these challenges? Doesn't look like it. You see, a big source of Maldivian debt is China. Just look at these numbers. Total foreign debt is more than $3 billion. Around 42% of it is owed to China. Total public debt is much higher. It's almost 118% of the GDP. And their GDP is almost $7 billion. Most of this debt was racked up in the last decade by Muizzu's mentor turned rival, Abdullah Yamin. He was president from 2013 to 2018, and this time he borrowed heavily from China. But it's now Muizzu's job to pay back. And how does he plan to do that? By taking more loans from China. In January, he traveled to Beijing for a 5-day visit. He asked China to restructure existing loans. China said, we'll think about it. But in that same trip, around 21 deals were signed, from digital economy to land reclamation to housing projects and for roads and highways. And here's the catch. We don't know the details of these projects. Chances are it's more loans and debt. Of course, Muizzu does not see a problem here. He says China's assistance is selfless. How about that? Two words I never imagined hearing together, China and selfless. I'm sure Muizzu saw what happened in Sri Lanka. Chinese loans pushed that country into a default. Could the Maldives be going the same way? At this rate, it is quite possible, which is why India should also be worried. Last week, the Maldivian foreign minister visited India. He had a special request for New Delhi, assistance of around $50 million. And India agreed. The State Bank of India has subscribed to a Maldivian treasury bill. It was supposed to mature this year, but the SBI will subscribe again. Basically, they will roll over the $50 million. Their foreign minister was all praises for this gesture. He said it symbolized goodwill and friendship. Talk about a turnaround. In January, President Muizzu called India a bully, and now his foreign minister can't stop praising India. But New Delhi alone cannot fix their problems. The Maldives needs to take stock because we're talking about a fragile economy here. Tourism is not always reliable. And the pandemic has shown us that. And climate change is on the march. Many Maldivian islands are on the front lines. They will be affected by the rising ocean. So the Maldives needs a comprehensive financial strategy, one that is delinked from politics. If not, the IMF's warnings may come true. In India, it's phase 4 of the general election. So 4 rounds of voting are over, 3 more remain. In this phase, some crucial seats went to the polls, especially in southern and eastern India. But the most talked about seat is that of Srinagar. This is the first time since 2019 that the people of Srinagar are voting, the first time since the abrogation of Article 370, which happened in August 2019. Also, for the first time since 1996, the BJP has not fielded a single candidate in Kashmir. Jammu and Kashmir has a total of 5 Lok Sabha seats. The BJP has fielded candidates in 2 seats in Jammu, but none in Kashmir. Why is that? Our next report tells you.
Today was phase 4 of polling in India. Voting took place over 96 constituencies in 10 states and union territories. Today's polling mostly covered southern and eastern states: Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, Bihar and West Bengal. Crucial seats went to polls in all of these states. But there's another key seat that went to polls in this phase: Srinagar. It's a key seat in Kashmir. This is the first time it has voted since 2019. That's when Article 370 was abrogated. Jammu and Kashmir has a total of 5 Lok Sabha seats. In Jammu, there's 2, the seats of Udhampur and Jammu. And in Kashmir, there are 3, Srinagar, Baramulla and Anantnag Rajouri. All 5 seats are voting in 5 different phases. In Kashmir, Srinagar voted today. Baramulla will vote on May 20th and Anantnag Rajouri on May 25th. In Srinagar, the voter turnout was around 35.75% till 5 p.m. That's the highest since 1996. That's not all. For the first time since 1996, the BJP hasn't fielded any candidate in Kashmir. It has 2 candidates in Jammu, but in Kashmir, the ruling party is not fighting the elections. The party spokesperson says that the BJP's priority in Kashmir is not elections, but to win the hearts of the people. So with the BJP officially sitting out the polls, the contest is now between regional parties in Kashmir. There's the National Conference and the People's Democratic Party. Both these parties are part of a larger opposition alliance, but at the local level, they are rivals. Then there are others like the People's Conference and the Jammu and Kashmir Apni Party.
This election is not about votes. This election is not about winning and losing. This election is also about connecting people, trying to heal them.
The National Conference had always said right from the beginning that we won't go out into the streets and take matters into our own hands. Whenever we have to express a view, it will be using the democratic, constitutional, legal route that is available to political parties. And that's what we're telling voters now, that you have to make your voice heard.
But while the BJP may not be contesting the polls, it's not completely out of the picture. It could end up supporting some of the parties. The ruling party's regional chief even hinted at it. He said like-minded patriotic parties could count on the support of the BJP. India began voting on April 19th in what is the biggest election in the world. Around 1 billion voters are exercising their democratic right this election season. They will elect 543 members of the Lok Sabha, that's the lower house of parliament. With this phase, the fate of 379 out of 543 constituencies has been decided. The last phase of voting is on June 1st. The counting will be on June 4th. That's when we will know who will win this mega election in India.
Now let's talk about the next pandemic. Of course, no one wants it, but it's not something you can wish away, so it's best to be prepared and be informed. Where will the next big outbreak come from? It may not be like the Wuhan virus. It may not even come from a wet market or a lab. In fact, it could be in the making as we speak. I'm talking about drug-resistant superbugs. They're immune to antibiotics. They pose a significant risk to humans, especially in India. These bugs are taking thousands of lives every day. Every year, drug-resistant infections are killing at least 1.2 million people the world over. That's about 3,500 deaths every day. Many of these patients are dying of infections that are completely treatable. And we're talking about all kinds of infections here: bacterial, viral, fungal, parasitic, like pneumonia, tuberculosis and malaria, just to name a few. They're all becoming harder to treat. Existing medicines aren't working very well. Proven drugs are failing to treat patients. Why is that? Because the bugs have built resistance to medicines, and Indian patients are particularly vulnerable. In 2019, a study was conducted. It looked at drug resistance in 41 countries. to see how effective antibiotics are among different populations. 41 countries and Indian patients were included in this research. A rating was assigned to every country. They were marked on a scale of 1 to 100. A low score meant the drugs were effective and a high score showed significant drug resistance. Guess who got the highest score? India did. India's rating was 71.6, meaning there's a higher chance that antibiotics won't work in India. They won't be effective in treating a larger number of Indian patients. And why is this happening? Because antibiotics are often misused in India. Patients pop them for anything and everything. In many cases, people just self-diagnose and they start taking antibiotics without a doctor's prescription. In other instances, doctors prescribe them even when the patient doesn't need antibiotics. And we have data to back this claim. It is from India's National Centre for Disease Control. Again, this was a survey of 10,000 patients. And here is what it found. In more than 50% of the cases, more than half the cases, antibiotics were given as prophylaxis, meaning a preventive drug. The patients did not need an antibiotic. The idea was to preempt and stop the infection. That's why they were given it. Only in 45% of the cases, antibiotics were given to treat an infection. So basically, patients are popping antibiotics like it's candy, and this is dangerous. This overuse is what leads to resistance. Viruses and bacteria learn how to survive these drugs. So when the patient genuinely needs this medication, it is no longer effective. This is by far the biggest cause behind the rise of drug-resistant superbugs. There are other contributing factors too, like poor sanitation, the lack of access to clean water. They can all make this outbreak worse. Even air pollution can play a role. Countries with high levels of air pollution also have a high number of cases of antibiotic resistance. This problem is simply too big to ignore. We may need to invest in new drugs or implement tougher rules to regulate the sale of antibiotics, but so far, this seems no one's priority. It's not getting the kind of attention from world leaders that it deserves. Experts say if antibiotics continue to lose their effectiveness, by the year 2050, 10 million people could die every year, 10 million, just because of drug resistance. Since the pandemic in 2020, the world has talked about better preparedness, but our leaders need to put their money where their mouth is. Now we turn to North Africa, to the country of Tunisia, where protests broke out over the weekend. This was after a prominent lawyer was arrested. The lawyer's name is Sonia Dahmani. She's a fierce critic of Tunisia's president, Kais Saied. Dahmani made a sarcastic comment on a TV show last week. On Saturday, the Tunisian police stormed the Bar Association headquarters in the capital. They arrested the lawyer. 2 journalists were also picked up. The arrests sparked outrage. Hundreds of Tunisians took to the streets. They demanded that the lawyer, the journalists, and the imprisoned opposition leaders be all released. And they also demanded a date for the next presidential election. Here's our report.
This is what took place in Tunisia on Saturday. Masked men broke into the Bar Association headquarters. They clashed with the lawyers and other people present. And they abducted a person using force. But despite appearances, the masked abductors were actually the police.
The Bar Association headquarters in Tunis was stormed today, May 11th, 2024 at 7 p.m. by dozens of masked security force agents, using violence and taking our colleague, lawyer Sonia Dahmani, to an unknown location. Violence was used against the lawyers present at the headquarters.
The masked police officers were conducting an arrest. They picked up Sonia Dahmani, a prominent critic of the president, Kais Saied. Dahmani was picked up for a sarcastic comment she made last week. She said something that mocked the president. President Saied had spoken about a conspiracy recently. A conspiracy to settle thousands of undocumented migrants from sub-Saharan Africa in Tunisia. Dahmani made fun of that theory. She said Tunisia wasn't a nice enough place that migrants would want to stay. The joke riled up the Tunisian president. It led to Dahmani's arrest. But the arrest sparked public anger. People took to the streets. and members of opposition political parties joined them.
The storming of the lawyer's house yesterday and the forcible taking of the lawyer Sonia Damani represent a precedent unseen in all the authoritarian eras in Tunisia.
The people are accusing the president of becoming increasingly authoritarian. Said is a democratically elected president. He won the last election in 2019. But since then, he has tightened his grip on power. In 2021, he dissolved Tunisia's parliament. He began ruling by decree. It was described as a self-coup. Said also brought Tunisia's judiciary under his thumb. He then proceeded to arrest critics, journalists, and even opposition leaders.
Today, the people are being arrested for anything, absolutely anything. On top of all that, we are undermining the upcoming elections. Tunisia will be on the brink of crisis and collapse. Therefore, we advocate for holding the elections on the scheduled date, ensuring they are conducted within a framework of freedom and equal opportunity.
Now, Tunisians are demanding the date of the next presidential election. Said assumed office in October 2019. His 5-year term is almost over. But despite this, no election date has been announced. The people of Tunisia are afraid that Said might try and extend his reign beyond his term. That is why they are demanding an election date. But will Said listen? Will he release his jailed opponents and announce a date? Considering his track record, it seems unlikely. So we may see more protests in Tunisia in the days to come.
It's a big day for India. The country will soon operate its first ever foreign port. Which one? Iran's Chabahar. It's been a story of delays and troubles. The project was first pitched in the year 2003, but it's taken 2 decades to reach here. Today, India's shipping minister traveled to Iran. In his presence, a deal was signed. An Indian company will now equip and operate a terminal at Chabahar. The company is called IPGL, India Ports Global Limited. It's a state-owned company which focuses on foreign ports. The deal is for 10 years. And this deal is very important. The IPGL was running operations at Chabahar, but that was a short-term deal. It had to be renewed every year. Now, this latest agreement is long-term. It locks down India as a port operator for 10 years. IPGL will invest around $120 million in Chabahar. We're talking about new equipment like reed stackers, forklifts, unloaders, basically things you need to run a major port. India is also extending some loans to Iran, loans worth $250 million. This money will be spent on projects near Chabahar, maybe roads or railways. Let's look at why this project is so important. Chabahar is located in southeast Iran. It's around 550 nautical miles from Gujarat's Kandla port, also 780 nautical miles from Mumbai. Chabahar can be a window for India. From here, you can trade with Central Asia. You can get aid to Afghanistan. You can link up to Russia in the north. And you can do all this while bypassing Pakistan. So it's a very important project. Also, look at the port next door. Pakistan's Gwadar port is east of Chabahar. It is the crown jewel of China's investments in the country. So Chabahar can steal Gwadar's thunder, especially if India moves quick. But that's also the issue here. India has moved very slowly on Chabahar. You can blame US sanctions, you can blame conflicts, but the fact is there were delays and Iran was losing patience. This year, Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar visited Tehran. The Iranians had a warning for him. Get Chabahar ready or face penalties. And it appears that India got the message because weeks later an agreement has been signed. It's important for a couple of reasons. One, it's India's first such long-term port deal. And second, it is with Iran, a country heavily sanctioned by the West. India could have given in to US pressure. Instead, India stood by Iran. And that's a strong political message. And finally, reason number 3, a template for the future. India is still new to such overseas projects. Yes, we've built schools and libraries and other infrastructure in the neighborhood, but this is heavy infrastructure. So it's a chance for India to showcase its delivery skills, to tell the world that we can do it too. And who knows, maybe more such projects will follow. India is betting on Chabahar to succeed. Minister Jaishankar said today's agreement will lead to more investments.
As and when a long-term arrangement is concluded, it will clear the pathway for bigger investments to be made in the port. Right now, the port has not grown because actually we didn't, if you don't have a long-term agreement, it's very difficult to invest in a port. So the very clear expectation is that the Chabahar port, at least that part of the Chabahar port that we are involved in, that will definitely see more investments. It will see more connectivity linkages coming out of that port.
Clearly, the focus is there, which is why the deal was signed now, in the middle of a general election in India, also in the middle of a war in West Asia. But what is the next stage? India's main focus appears to be Afghanistan and Central Asia, and if so, connectivity will be key. Things like roads and railways. It would provide access to new Asian markets. It would also cut down trade time to old ones, like Russia. Let's see what happens with Chabahar's next stage of investments. Hopefully, it will be quicker than the first one. They say diamonds are a girl's best friend. Well, scratch that. In our universe, diamonds seem to be a planet's best friend. Scientists have discovered a new planet that is apparently made up of diamond. It's located 41 light years away. It is made of carbon, and it's very, very dense. So scientists believe that all that carbon has crystallized into diamond, and it's not the only one. Planets made of diamond may be more common than you imagine. Our next report explains.
In a galaxy far, far away, astronomers have stumbled upon a cosmic jackpot, a diamond planet. It's known as 55 Cancri e. The planet is located 41 light-years away. It's twice the size of Earth, 9 times the mass of our planet. It's what scientists would call a super-Earth. That means it's larger than Earth, but smaller than planets like Uranus and Jupiter. But why is it dubbed the diamond planet? You see, planets are made of dust and gases. Usually, it's all about the ratio of those gases. Take Earth, for example. It has a lower carbon-to-oxygen ratio, which makes our diamond content pretty low, around 0.001%. But some others have a higher carbon-to-oxygen ratio, like this planet, 55 Cancri e. It's mostly made of carbon, which is new for planetary chemistry. Usually, diamonds are formed when carbon is crystallized. It is usually under intense heat and pressure. This planet has both. First, it's very, very dense. Second, it's boiling hot. So scientists believe all the carbon on this planet has been compressed to diamond. Of course, like all other planets, this one too has a star. It's called the Cancri A. But unlike the Earth, it's located much closer to its star. That's what makes it so hot. It has a surface temperature of almost 2,400 degrees Celsius. In fact, the radiation is so high, it has stripped the planet of its atmosphere. But to the surprise of NASA, this planet has grown a second atmosphere. Of course, a diamond planet sounds very exciting, but 55 Cancri e isn't the only one. It's raining diamonds in our galaxies. Scientists believe there could be thousands of such planets. Out of the 5,600 confirmed exoplanets, researchers think over 1,900 could have diamond rain. That's almost a third of all discovered exoplanets. And there's a reason for this. Earlier it was believed that forming diamonds needed particular conditions, but it seems easier than what was believed. Compressed carbon compounds can turn into diamonds at less extreme temperatures than estimated. That means diamond rain could be more common than previously imagined. Which brings us to the question, why can't we get some of those? Well, the answer is quite simple. These planets are light years away. 1 light year is almost 9.5 trillion kilometers. So getting to these planets is almost impossible. And even if we did reach them, they won't be the most hospitable. Imagine record high temperatures and ice rain. So while diamond rain sounds incredible, we will have to enjoy it from afar. While diamonds may be one of the most precious gemstones on Earth, and it is rare on our little planet, but our galaxies seem to have an abundance of it. Guess diamonds are a planet's best friend.
Endless swiping, empty conversations, too few or too many matches. It is no surprise that online daters are burnt out. People say relationships are hard work, but to many, even finding love feels like a full-time job. Well, if you can relate, the founder of Bumble, a popular dating app, has a solution for you. This is Whitney Wolfe Herd, and she says that soon artificial intelligence will date for you. Let me explain. This was a discussion on how AI could influence dating, and she proposed a scenario where singles use AI dating concierges. They would stand in for their users by reaching out to prospective partners online, scanning them and choosing people worth meeting. This would mean goodbye endless swiping and cringy small talk. Those are the obvious positives. But this idea has invited uneasiness as well. Some say this sounds like an AI-style arranged marriage. Some claim this would only exacerbate loneliness, and some have compared the idea to episodes of Black Mirror. For those who have not watched it, it's a TV series about the dystopian uses of technology. Not to sound like a neo-Luddite, but it does sound a bit strange. After all, this is counterintuitive. Using artificial intelligence to make authentic connections. But believe it or not, this is not the future. It's already happening. We're already living in the age of automated dating, much like our artwork, our homes. AI is infiltrating the dating space too. How? AI is acting as a wingman, a love guru, a matchmaker, and even a partner. Established players have already integrated AI into their platforms, and they're regularly testing new products. For instance, Tinder is building a new tool. It will offer advice on which pictures work for the user, kind of like a tech version of asking your friends which photos to use. But it's not the industry leaders who are taking the lead on AI, it's the new apps. Name an online dating problem, and there is an AI solution. Unsure of how to start a conversation? Dating apps will function as a digital wingman. They will come up with killer opening lines for you. Tired of the initial small talk? 2 AI bots will start a conversation. If the humans like what they read, well, they can jump in. Don't know whom to date. Dating apps will use AI and pair potential couples, and that's not all. If you want to make dating even less human, an array of apps offer digital girlfriends and boyfriends.
A real person cannot be with you and be ready to chat with you at any given time of the day, but my AI partner can serve this kind of role. I don't think any of the companions or the lovers in real life are perfect, but I can create the AI partners according to my preferences.
All kinds of dating apps are using artificial intelligence in ways that were earlier reserved for sci-fi movies. And maybe it is a novelty or the ease of use, but people are increasingly willing to give it a try. According to a recent study, 75% of dating app users want to use AI to text potential love interests. But theatrics aside, the question still remains, can AI hack love? Will AI change dating for better or for worse? Honestly, it's too early to answer that question, but we can draw parallels. Look at the HR industry. It has been flooded by bland and bizarre resumes written with the help of ChatGPT. But then again, job hunting platforms are using AI as well, and they have benefited from it. So will AI streamline the dating process, or will it make profiles less honest? Will dating platforms shelter millions of bots as humans descend further into isolation, or will they make it easier to find love? We don't know how AI bots will affect dating, but we do know what they won't do, what the bots won't do. They won't make people better at communicating. They won't make the relationship itself easier. They won't stop hearts from breaking. AI may provide a new interface for the same old routine, the exasperating search for love and all that goes into keeping it. As they say, the more things change, the more they remain the same. And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. In India, a huge billboard collapses during a dust storm in Mumbai, killing several people. In Italy, climate protesters disrupt Italian Open matches with confetti and glue. And in Iraq, a barber creates art using the hair of his clients. Finally, we're taking you back in history. On this day in 1998, India carried out nuclear tests in Rajasthan's Pokhran. It was called Operation Shakti. With these tests, India entered an elite club of nuclear powers, but it did not go down well with the West. They condemned the tests. India has since been a responsible nuclear state with a no first use policy. We're leaving you on that note. Thanks for watching. We will see you tomorrow.